Okay, so you probably got the message that we are recording. Today is Sunday, June 28th, morning, early morning in the United States, afternoon um, in Europe, late afternoon in Asia. And this is our monthly meeting to discuss anything related to research that you're interested in. It could be general questions about research, it can be specific, it could be something you're working on. I have a little topic here from Bernard we can talk about. I don't think they'll take a lot of time. And I had some correspondence with Greg, who is here about his research, which I think is very cool. He's making great progress with it. And Greg, I don't know if you want to discuss that, but I think the first thing I'll do is mention something from Bernard. Let me share my screen so you can see what I got here. Oh, and there's an announcement I want to make. I just thought of that. Let me put here announcement. Um, I was going to do this and I forgot about it. Announcement recording of June 20 event. So of summary of June 20 event for the public. Um, So on June 20th, we had a meeting sponsored by the Dutch Society for Astrological Research. It was organized and monitored by Ton, who is here. And um, I went through, cleaned it up for public presentation, and it's accessible to the public. So I just want you to know about it. It's really a wonderful resource on recent exciting research. So if you go to YouTube, and one way to find it is to go to YouTube, type Cosmobiology Institute, and then you'll see, well, there it is. But if you click on any of the links, let's say Cosmobiology Institute, in case it doesn't show up right away, there it is, Breakthroughs in Astrology Research in 2026. This is a summary of um, the research that was presented at the Cosmic Discovery Conference. We had some debates about, whether this is a good idea or not, because people paid a lot of money and traveled to go to this conference. And for free, we're presenting a summary of uh, what went on. And I really broke it down and thought about what it meant to astrologers. It was a pretty exciting meeting, and there were 2 hours of discussion afterwards. I removed that from the video because, it's sort of private. People aren't expecting to be in a permanently available public space. So it's just the lecture part of it. So I want you to know about that in case you don't know about it. And going back, so that's just a quick announcement. And for topics, Bernard just mentioned that if CI grows, Cosmobiology Institute, and hopefully it grows exponentially, and it really is starting to grow. Um, uh, Ton Kuick is really reaching out to people who are advanced and contributed a lot to research throughout Europe and the rest of the world. So it's exciting. We're starting to get real important dialogue also with the cynics of astrology, the people like Jeffrey Dean, Arthur Mather, Rudolf Schmidt, and other people. They're extremely influential in their point of view that nothing has been validated in astrology, and the research looks rather hopeless. And so we're having a good dialogue and interaction about that, bringing together people with different points of view. Um, and so anyway, one of the things that Bernard mentioned is if CI continues to grow and it grows rapidly, what about personal interaction? How do we connect? That tends to disappear as your numbers get big. And one of the things we have to facilitate that, and Starlene is here. Starlene, I don't think we have a link. Do we have a link to the Go collab from the website? I don't think so.
It's at the top bar. I think I forget what the wording is, but it has a little arrow.
Oh,
If you click
good.
the website, and it'll just pop out to the that website. Yeah, join.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, it is there. So good. That means you don't have to memorize anything. Just go to the website. You can go to cosmobiology.org. It's also under cosmobiologyinstitute.org. Got two names. Go to the website and it says join. I highly recommend this if you haven't done it. You click on join. And it takes you, since I'm already joined, it takes me right into my account. Otherwise, I think it prompts you, and you can join. And um, actually, I haven't been here in a while, so we've got general discussions, um, and I think, well, I haven't been here in like 3 or 4 weeks. I need to start going myself. I should walk the walk and not just talk the talk. But it was Sterling, somewhere in here, it has I thought we had a list of people, members. Yeah, if I go to members at the top, here you can introduce yourself. Um, so you can go to members at the top and just put your name in and what you do. This is a start. We can organize this better. We can have different categories. We can do all kinds of stuff. Well, look, a lot of people are already in there. And this is something we'll talk about in our board meetings about how to organize and develop this online meeting place to ask questions, introduce yourselves. We need to make subgroups of people with different interests, things like that. So I'm going to put that on the agenda for the next research meeting. So that's a start. And then from there, we can have, live meetings of people with similar interests, for example. So that's a big start in building the community. Our goal is to build a global community. It's starting to happen of people that are interested in real research, sophisticated research, as well as research at any level. But um, those research projects that are done very carefully and thoroughly is really exciting. And we have a team of people with expertise in statistics, research methods to brainstorm with, and also different areas of astrology. So that's one idea about that, to get that going. So yeah, we're thinking about building this community and being proactive in doing it. And of course, if you have ideas, you can put them in the chat, you can share them here, you can go to the Go Co-op, share them there as well. We need to get better about monitoring the site. Also, volunteer work is tremendously helpful and needed. We have 7 board members who, a lot of us spend a lot of time doing it, but other people coming in and people volunteering to monitor the Go Collab and other things would be really helpful. Christopher and Starlene are here. They're on the board, and Ton is on the board. We have 4 board members, and maybe some others have joined here. Oh, Vincent's here also. And by the way, welcome Penelope and Kristen who come on board. Um, and Alexi is here. I might have missed a few others who've recently joined. Um, I don't know if any of the other board members who are here want to add anything. Probably not. It's really simple. But if you do, you can unmute and say something about all that. So on research topics, does anybody have anything they want to discuss?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I put a question in the chat,
okay, excellent. Let me go in the chat.
and
Um,
for others, I am Tom, and but the name is here Aquila Vision. That is Aquila is a constellation with an important star, Libertas. But I will remove that later on and only put my name on it. So I'm Tom Aquila Vision now, and my surname is you cannot pronounce it, so call me Quick, something like that. The right pronunciation is kuik, and that is a sound that is not familiar for English speaking people. So Tom Quick, I listen to.
Okay. And that's
But
Ton with an N.
yeah,
T-O-N.
I listen to both, but officially it is with yes, the end of no. Yes.
Yeah.
My question refers to the very interesting debate we had after your presentations last Saturday, and that Christopher Benton brought it in. And I think that is something to share about what kind of effect sizes can we expect. And there were very interesting things mentioned about that. And I had some thought about it as well that I want to share later on. But maybe that is a good topic.
Okay. I think it's a great topic. And just to introduce it, and then I'll have ask Dr. Benton to kick this off. When we do quantitative research, there's typically two values that are reported. The p-value, which means the probability of getting the results if you repeat the research, and the effect size. And the effect size means the practical, like, can you use this? How large is it? And one of the issues is that if you have a large number of, let's say, people, usually we're studying people, so I'll just say people. If you have a large number of people that you're studying, say thousands, the statistics will detect very slight differences between, say, a control group and the experimental group. The simple example I like to give is height of people. Suppose you compared the height of people in England and Germany. And if you had 100,000 people, maybe you find out that Germans are 1 centimeter taller. Like, it's a very tiny amount, but with a large sample size, it's statistically significant, but the effect size is so small, it's not useful. So if you're looking for basketball players who are tall, it's not going to do you any good to go to Germany because they're 1 centimeter taller. It's negligible. Um, so there's effect size and there's p-value. So that's to introduce the topic. Christopher, do you want to start adding to what I started to say, or?
Yeah, it's interesting. The example I often use is if you take a large school district like you have in New York City, and perhaps every year students take standardized tests, and it's quite possible that just if on the math test, if students in New York City, if their average score goes up by a single point, there's so many people involved that that can be a significant difference. But is that really going to be a noticeable difference? Are you going to really be able to discern that, wow, this person got 1 extra point on the standardized math test compared to what was done the previous year? So quite often you can have statistically significant results and yet either a small or very small effect size. Now, I think what most people discover in astrology, those of us who are looking at effect size, we discover that most single factor astrological configurations usually have just a very small effect, even if they're statistically significant. When you start combining astrological configurations together to form a more complex kind of astrological signature, where you have several conditions usually joined by or, then that often results not only in better p-values, but also a larger effect size. But as I often point out, it's really to our advantage that astrological configurations often have a small effect size because if it didn't, we wouldn't be able to use free will to change the direction of things. And the example I like to use is if you jump out of an airplane without a parachute, then due to the gravity of things, you're probably going to die, right? And you can't use your free will and say, well, I'm going to use my free will to float upward. The effect of gravity on you is going to be so strong that you can't really change course. But in astrology, if things have smaller effect sizes, we can introduce new variables which will help us direct and alter the outcome. Now, for a lot of astrological tests, there's some standard ways, statistical tests, there's some standard ways to measure effect size, and actually you can go to probably any artificial intelligence bot and get a good list. But if we're, let's see, a lot of these measures are due to a statistician named Cohen. And for instance, if we're looking for a significant difference between two means, then the standard effect size tool is Cohen's D. If you're doing linear correlation, then the linear correlation coefficient R is used as a measure of effect size. For difference between two proportions, you can use Cohen's H or risk ratio, which I like because it's easier for people to understand. For a chi-square test for independence, the standard measure is Kramer's V. For a chi-square goodness of fit test, there's a measure called Cohen's H. For ANOVA, analysis of variance, there are a variety of different tools for effect size, and the one I usually use is Cohen's F. And again, you can go to artificial intelligence and it will show you exactly what the formula is for computing each of those things. And you can also ask artificial intelligence, what are the usual cutoff points for small, medium, and large effects? And effect size is one of those things that should be included routinely in published papers these days, along with p-values, probability values. I think that's about it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let me ask one question, and then I'll open this up for Christopher to address. What are one of the things that affects effect size that influences effect size is the size of the experimental group, we'll call it, and control group if there is one. What else affects, someone wants to improve effect size, what can we do? You can get more people, and maybe Vincent wants to help answer that question.
Yeah.
Oh, you're muted, Vincent. You're still muted, Vincent.
Yes, there's a connection between the sample size, as we know, but just to make it clear, the smaller for the equivalent p-value, the smaller the sample size, the bigger the effect. So if you want to influence the effect, you try, but it's paradoxical because it inclines you to use small sample size, but you need big sample size to have an effect. Sometimes to have a p-value. So it's very subtle.
Yeah.
So if you want to get some good effect, you got to design good protocols and look at significant variables. I'd like to comment on what Christopher said about free will and everything. So that's obvious that if you look on one factor, it's very difficult to have a strong, big effect, and even the low p-values. I call that pixels because the astrology is a big picture made of pixels. And yesterday, when I was riding in my bicycle in the forest, I had a flash. You remember in the 80s, the very, very fashionable word was that everything was holistic. So you remember that word holistic?
Yeah.
Holons. So holistic means global, systemic, integrative. Astrology, by its very fundamental nature, is holistic, made of pixels. When I say pixel, it looks ridiculous. People don't listen. But when I say holistic, maybe people will begin to understand. I see a lot of good astrologers trying to do astrology in practice. In many situations, rezoning on pixels. It's like holism is lost. We have to come back there. So in research, holism is models with many variables like linear regression or others. Even when you combine the pixels to get stronger effects, you still preserve free will, because I don't think the free will is because the factors are tiny, and even when you combine them with very, 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 very big, strong effects, free will is still there, but because by its very nature, the pixels, the factors are probabilistic. So if you combine probabilistic pixels, you still got a probabilistic full image. So a big metaphor would be weather. You have a lot of factors to predict weather. If you combine them, you're pretty good to predict, but you won't predict with absolute certainty that it's going to rain. How much rain exactly you're going to get, or maybe it's wrong, maybe it won't rain. So even if you combine a lot of factors with a strong effect, you may fail, because I think by its very nature, I come back to astrology, is probabilistic. This is it.
Thank you. So, so to improve effect size, one thing is to add more astrological factors.
Yes.
And Vincent, Christopher mentioned that, and Vincent's reinforcing it, and adding more astrological factors you can think of as being more holistic. Looking at the word holistic to me implies the integrated situation. For example, if I want to improve my health, there's exercise, there's diet, there's attitude, there's possibly psychological things that could be helped through therapy or meditation or whatever. And so that would be a more holistic approach to health rather than saying, oh, just go to the doctor and do what the doctor tells me. So we want to look at all these relevant variables. Anything else we can do besides add more astrological factors and develop a more holistic model?
Let's see.
Sure.
I
Go ahead,
just
Chris.
Okay, I just want to point out that I think there's more of a relationship between sample size and p-values than there is between sample size and effect sizes. Because as you increase your sample size, the variance in your data, or what in most tests we call the standard error, tends to decrease. And that brings results more into focus. With effect size, it's more a matter of if the effect is small, then you usually need a lot of data to just be able to detect to get a good estimate of the effect size. With small samples, you can usually detect a meaningful effect size only if it's very large to begin with. So more data does help you probably more accurately determine what the effect size is, but
Mhm.
it's not the case that more data means larger effect size.
Right. Yeah,
Yes.
after I said that, I realized what was I thinking? I guess, I woke up late this morning and jumped in here, so I'll blame it on that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Can I,
it has no relationship to effect size. So
there's
Well,
you have to add
a little
more
bit.
factors.
Can I comment, please?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Christopher. I meant when I said it that with equal p-value, the lower the sample, the higher the effect size. That's purely mathematics. But in practice, you're right. If you lower it, you're gonna lose your p-value. You're gonna make bigger, and you won't have any effect. I agree.
Mhm.
So it's just peripheral. It means that if you're looking for something that really is strong with a big effect, even with low sample, you're going to see it. Is that what this is what I meant. And I'd like
Mhm.
to answer also to Santino about what he said about what can we do to improve our effect size more than just picking many
No,
variables. It's very obvious.
it
You
is it.
need to work. Oh, excuse me. I
No,
thought.
please go on. Go on.
Okay, I'm nearly finished. It's very simple. You got to pick good variables. Like for a lot of researchers, including Robert Curry, for instance, wouldn't do, now he changed, but a few years ago wouldn't have done research on midpoints. We know that midpoints is strong factor. And I think that if I want to do good research, I'm not attracted to doing research including houses in my model because my practice, my intuition tells me it's not a strong variable. I'm rather inclined to use aspect, and I would go with harmonics before going with signs, even less with houses. So it's a question of picking, having the knack, the intuition, and the experience.
Yeah, what I would like to
It's
add,
based on experience to choose the good factors.
yeah, but what I would like to add is the thought that it also is important to, yeah, what you say, to include the right parameters. And I have the
Exactly.
feeling that higher vibrational parameters that are measures of higher vibrations in the chart are very important because uh, uh, and if you combine them, look at the bipolar studies and others, then the higher vibes tell the story, and the higher the vibe, there is free will is always available, but you don't have always the consciousness to act on free will.
Mhm.
If you're not aware, then you make the wrong decision. So if you have higher consciousness, what's going on and who you are in terms of higher vibes that I have very strong patterns, for instance, then you can influence that. But if you are not aware, then it's just a driving force inside you you're not aware of. That is one thing, and that for me that's the reason that vibrational astrological parameters, if you include them in analysis, might come up with real bigger effect sizes because you have the right parameters to determine the effect you want to measure. Do I make myself a
Yeah.
little bit clear?
That's very clear.
Let me just summarize some conclusions, and because this is an exciting conversation. Let me just summarize where we're at for everybody. We have two things that improve your effect size. Number one, add more astrological factors. Number two, find better astrological factors. Better means they we in statistics we often call the astrological factors predictor variables. Um, Astrologers don't like that because they say it's not causal, it's just whatever, but they're still called predictor variables. And then you have an outcome variable. So I'll use the term predictor variables. Find better predictor variables.
Mhm.
Now and just to summarize, there's pretty widespread agreement among people who analyze the existing research that aspects and midpoint structures are better than zodiac signs and houses. You may not like to hear that, you may not agree with it, but if like for example, Christopher and Vincent also, um, they have gone through the existing research more than I have. Um, and all of us find that so far, that's what the research shows. Then, of course, this is the last thing I'm going to say, is just to summarize where we're at, is then there are also, of course, in any field this happens, astrologers have other variables that we don't always agree about. So Todd is saying
Mhm.
high harmonics. Look at my
Yeah, I
bipolar
want to.
disorder research. So naturally, I agree with that, but most
No,
researchers are not looking at those higher harmonics. So not
Mhm.
everybody's going there. And Todd, go ahead.
yeah, I want to add that the following. Um, if you only use the standard aspects, uh, and then you say, well, oh, okay, I want to now use midpoint because they tell a better story. But midpoint actually, by definition, from a vibrational astrological standpoint of view, you include higher harmonics
Yeah.
because a midpoint can have all distances between the 3 points, and so basically, if you include midpoints, you include higher harmonics.
Right.
And the same holds for isotraps. If you consider isotraps or planetary pictures, the way it was called.
Yeah.
So if you include planetary pictures, you basically include higher vibrational parameters by considering them. And that's what I want to bring up. That is it supports using midpoints. It supports using vibrational parameters, and the bipolar study done by Centino only looks at vibrations, not even at midpoints, and you see the results already there
Mhm.
in those vibes. So that was a thought, and it has to do with consciousness, which you need to apply free will you're offered by the creator or the creation. You have free will all the time, but you should be able to apply free will. And that requires knowledge and consciousness and wisdom.
Okay,
Can
Starlene
I
has her
can I
hand
just
up.
I waited a long time. Can I just because
Yeah, go ahead,
yeah,
Bernard.
thanks.
Go ahead.
There's an aspect of this discussion which you added to your notes, but there's no one who's actually voiced it. So I want to voice the arguments against free will. It's especially good when both, and you wrote it down there, free will debated in the sciences, Sokolowski and Hossenfelder. If we're going to refer to the scientists that are more visible on YouTube, they argue against free will. But I mean, my background is in biology, so I'm more related to Sokolowski than I am to Hossenfelder. And also, I don't have an autistic diagnosis, as far as I know, which Hossenfelder has. I'm sorry, I'm kidding. But I think I feel that this whole discussion is really weak because we're discussing something called astrology as it is practiced in the West and not very well researched, and we're using the weak effects that we potentially find as an argument for free will, which is even more doubtful. You know, philosophically, free will is it's like why even start to use weak research, empirical research to defend free will? For me, this is really a waste of time. And I would like to propose a third angle on the weak effects, and that is that we're looking not at the wrong parameters, but we're looking at the wrong nexus where it all ties together, and that is potentially not. Now I'm going to sound like a purist, which I'm not, but if we go back to when the idea of astrological effects potentially arose, that was with the Babylonians, perhaps with the Chinese, if we look at the most ancient books. But what the point is that what does the origin have to do with what we're doing today? They didn't. I mean, they wouldn't recognize the astrology, which is natally based. They were into social movements, and sure, the natal horoscope of the leader of the city-state was essential in that, but they were looking at social movements, not at natal horoscopy. Natal horoscopy is why we presumably are insisting upon free will, because we have a construction of what it is to be an individual, and when we trace that back, we see the birth of the physical body as the essential moment for that. And for me, this could very well explain why we have the weak effects, because we're looking at the wrong place.
I'd like to comment. Thank you, Bernard.
And before you comment, Bernard, I've summarized in paraphrasing in my own words some of the points you made.
You don't want me to talk something else?
Hold on. So while Vincent is talking, you can look at it to see if you want to edit anything. You can put that in the chat or mention it later. Go ahead, Vincent.
First, it's true that the individual natal astrology didn't exist, but I'm still waiting for evidence-based or proved protocol on this type of astrology. Obviously, the ancient astrology more fatalistic, so it would be normally easy to test it. I still wait for that. For the moment, it's true that what we do is weak. I'm devoted to research since nearly 20 years. Every day I do my best, and I recognize that it's weak. For instance, I'd like to give an example, try to admit something publicly. I was a lot influenced by Ebertin by picking the type of aspects I would look at. So I just combine square and opposition, calling it D for dissonant, and trine and sextile for harmonics. Ebertin is not the only one. Here's Siggs. A lot of astrologers were that way at the end of the century, 20th century. I've done a model with that. Probably it's too large. When I read research by, for instance, the last fantastic research by coming in the next correlation by Christopher, he find effect on Chiron, Saturn, specific aspect, not dissonant. Square and opposition give really different effects. And last discussion we had with Mr. Arubi, I forgot his, what's his name of Arubi? You know what? Yeah, the stock market guy. He was there with us.
Bill Meridian.
Yeah, Bill Meridian. And he said at one moment, this effect is connected, I think he said a square or an opposition. So he just was very accurate saying it was not dissonant, it was the square. So it reminded me that I, like Santino, like me, differently, we tried a lot to model stock market. I worked a lot on SP 500 more than one time, about 5 times at different moments in my life. And it never worked. When I say didn't work, I get model. The model was extremely impressive. I was ready to publish, but it didn't work. The replication didn't work. So I said, oh, I didn't think that my way of working was because I didn't pick the good variables. I thought my variables were good, and that's because it was by nature impossible because it's a moving target. You got many companies, it move all the time, and probably it's impossible. But now I think I was wrong. Probably I should work with better variables like specific aspects. When I looked at research by Christopher, it's very obvious. And I said I was wrong. So
Okay.
that's true that you should improve. We should improve to find the best. But there's no absolute solution. That's my conclusion. It's like painting. You can do good paintings in different styles with different colors, or like picking when you play golf, you can play with different sticks. So you can work with harmonics, work midpoints with different things, but there's no absolute better factors according to me.
Okay, I've got a lot of people trying to get into the discussion, and I like as many people to be able to participate as possible. So I've got Starlene and Alexi who have not spoken yet. So Starlene, you had your hand up before. Do you still have a question or something you want to mention?
Yeah, these are just hopefully easy questions, but they relate to what you guys are talking about. So I've been collecting data of people that have ADHD. You've talked about this before, Santina, but I've been collecting it. I've got um I would assume like about 60 people or so. And I was wondering, since you guys are talking about sample size and effect size, like would you have a number that might be the best number for me to, collect that much before I start looking at the data? Because from my understanding, it's better not to actually look at it prematurely until I start doing the research. That was one part. And then the other that I got from Vincent because he's kind of said that a few times. And the other part was, should I go in with this because it's exploratory? But should I go in with this having certain factors that I think might be there, or just really go in it just to see what's there? What is
Wow.
like the better way to do that? I guess that's my question.
Wow, this is really critically important. So you got two questions. One is when, uh, after how much data do you start looking at it? Should she wait till she has 40, 50, 60? And I forget how I wanted to phrase the second part. Um, well, this is exploratory. I'll just put in here just to clarify. This is exploratory research. And to what extent should you state your expectations? Is that a reasonable
Presumptions
paraphrasing?
or expectations? Yeah.
So this is a really important question. This is the nuts and bolts of research. She's interested in, what is it, ADHD or something?
Yeah.
Yeah. ADHD. She's collecting the data. She's been told don't look at it. When can she look? 20 people, 40 people, 60 people? This is real now. Like people have to make decisions. And should she state what she expects, or how should she proceed? And let's start with Dr. Benton because he's an expert in statistical analysis. I mean, we have a lot of experts here, but what do you think, Christopher? What should she do?
Well, first, let me say, and you need to first be thinking about how you're going to be analyzing the data. And then we have the question of how much data do you need? Well, for that, you can use a freeware tool like GPower to do an a priori estimate of how much data you need in order to have sufficient statistical power for detecting whatever effects are actually present. So that's one thing. Now, in terms of looking at the data, when should you look at the data? When should you not? In some things in statistics, I tend to be a maverick. There are certainly, people who say, well, these are the rules, you should do it this way and this order, et cetera, et cetera. I often make a counter argument that, whatever patterns are existing in the data, they're there whether we look at them or not. So, just looking at the data at any point in time is not going to alter whether certain significant patterns are there or not. So I don't usually have a concern about when you look at the data. But, if you're concerned about statistical power, and if you have the opportunity to add, more data on, then I would do an a priori analysis of using G-Power software probably to determine how much data you need in order to have enough statistical power to even have a chance of finding a significant results. Now, there are a couple of other things I want to comment on that have been talked about. And when it comes to free will, yeah, every time I mention free will, there's always another conversation going on in the back of my head. And I usually mean a better descriptor would be apparent free will. Because I know that there are arguments that philosophers and scientists have made that we actually don't have any free will at all. But from a personal point of view, it appears to us as if we are in control of our bodies and we have free will, whether to raise my hand or lower my hand, things like that. But in the back of my head, the conversation that's going on is that what appears to me to be free will may simply be a result of not taking into consideration enough data. For example, if there's one person who every time something is going on with Mars, they just immediately blow up and get angry. But you might have another person that under the same kind of aspects will routinely restrain their anger, inhibit the expression of those emotions. And we usually often chalk that up to free will, but the difference could have to do with other things like higher vibrational charts that I may not be taking into consideration. I don't know, but the bottom line is whenever I mention free will, I really mean what appears to us to be free will. But these are sort of interpretations that we add on to what's there. We can approach things without making those interpretations. We can say you either have a significant p-value or you don't. You either have a strong effect size or you don't. You can measure all of those things without doing so much of a philosophical interpretation of them. The other thing I want to comment on is, like many other people, I have found that aspects work more strongly than signs or houses, and that it's generally much easier to find some significant results related to aspects than to the signs or houses. And I actually kind of see that as an argument in favor of astrology. Because if all of these significant effects were simply due to chance, if they were all type 1 errors, then why I would expect to get just as many significant results due to chance when looking at signs or houses as I do when I look at aspects. the fact that we find many more significant results when looking at aspects versus signs and houses, that kind of tells me that there's really something going on, that these just aren't happening by chance.
Yeah, it's a great
So
point.
I hope that helps a bit.
Yeah, thank you. And Alexi's been
Just
patiently
starting.
waiting. I want to get everybody in here.
Okay. I'll wait.
Please,
Okay.
please, we need to get other people in. There's only a half hour
Sure,
left.
sure.
So Alexi, please.
Well, thank you. I would like to add, I think, an important point over here, that we still, in all our researches, we still lack the fundamental physical or physics model or natural model of cause and effect, how the stars actually influence our lives or events on our Earth. Because without it, if we find large size
The sound is not good.
effect,
Yeah,
we could
unfortunately,
be in the
your voice is
of
breaking up.
so-called sound. Let me 1 2 3. How do you hear me right now?
Okay,
Yes.
now it's better. Why don't you
Okay.
say everything over again?
Yes,
Try it
yes.
without the video.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
excellent.
I'll just yes. I'll turn off the video. So the point is that we still lack the fundamental physics model, which describes the cause and effect of how stars influence our lives or events on our Earth. Because without this model, even if we found a large size effect, it will not prove that astrology works. It will only prove that there is a correlation between some astrological configurations and the events on our Earth, which are visible and detectable, because we could be in the trap of so-called temporal confound. And to explain this term, I will just bring you a few examples. Imagine that you are a researcher who tried to find the correlation between the celestial configuration and the frequency of the earthquakes. And you see that each decade, the number of earthquakes is increasing. And you associate it with the movement of slow planets like Uranus or Neptune or Saturn. But in fact, this is not because of the stars. This is because of the number of seismological stations is constantly grows and detects more small frequency earthquakes. And from this perspective, any astrological configuration is only a pointer of a moment of time. But the physical process, they evolve on the background of that time. And we think that if we find a large size effect, we can prove that astrology works. But in fact, this is still a trap of temporal confound. And to be more exact in our researches, we need to mostly concentrate, as I think, not on the correlation between celestial configurations and the events of the Earth, but rather on modeling the physical reality or the physics model, which describes the cause and effect chain of how, with use of each physical powers or explanations, the stars can actually influence the Earth or the events in the Earth. And based on that, we can just test the model per se. So if there is a neutrino effect, we can test the numbers of neutrino, which just appear in the atmosphere and then influence our motivations, just influencing our brains and the reactions in our brain chains or whatever. So we need to test this small part of the theory, which at the first step is hypothesis. And after that, if these tests will prove the theory, these small parts of the hypothesis, all these parts will construct a theory. And from this perspective, a large effect, which will make much more sense to defend the astrology than the large effect in the correlation between the celestial configurations and the events on the Earth. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Well, that's brilliant. If you guys don't mind, I want to paraphrase some of the points that Alexei made in case, just to reinforce it. And Alexei, after I'm done, you can tell me if I've corrupted what you were saying. Alexei's saying that our research is mostly correlations. We're getting correlations between something in the sky and some behavior or personality. Number one, there can be extraneous variables that explain the correlation. Like or simple example, and this is very simple, is that if there are more earthquakes, we can say, oh, it's these outer planet transits, when in fact it could just be not related to that at all. This is the trap of temporal confound. We're seeing things happening at the same time, and we're saying it's the astrology. There's always the possibility of some extraneous variable, something else that's causing that, even if it's not a long-lasting thing. So what we really need very much in research is a model, like a physics model, that shows a deeper or more specific reason why this correlation exists. For example, if we measure the number of neutrinos and we can see that, it gets to a more granular or specific level, which helps explain these, you might say, gross or large level correlations. More specifically, it would give us a better understanding of what's going on. So we're in need of some more specific explanations to better understand that. Alexei, did I paraphrase that reasonably well?
Everything is correct. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I think this is a really, really important thought that he's contributing. And Christopher's got his hand up. So you go ahead.
Well, did Vincent have something first?
Oh, yeah, Vincent wanted to speak. Vincent?
You're muted. You're on mute, Vincent.
Okay.
I apologize. I'll do it again. Starlene, just to tell you that I wrote on the chat that there's someone, a lady in Quebec, doing research since a few years on ADHD. So that could be nice to communicate and work with. That would be a pretext to make the organization known to them, even if I talk. Coming from you is different. She's the president of the Orion, the main astrological association in Quebec. And I gave you the website. So you can
great. I'll
write
look
by
at
their contact and tell her that you're doing research. Maybe she'd be interested to work with you. So that was my first point. It's okay.
That would be great.
If you've got a question, you can ask me on that. My second point was about free will. I remember I read something, a metaphor by Arthur Kessler, was a thinker that influenced me a lot. He said, it's like humanity is like, free will is like humanity's, we are in a train going to a certain direction. We don't have any power on, but we can walk into the train from one wagon to another, from the back to the end. So we walk in the train, so we feel free, but there's a direction. Lastly, I'd like to add finally something I wrote. I never done it. A conference about free will, but not free will event free will of the global personality. We decide to choose, and this way we choose a kind of destiny by choosing who we're going to be with according to. And my example was really, very, really funny and impressive. I took Donald Trump. And you know that with my computer system, my 6 expert system, I got a 2-level tree of words. And I asked chatgpt to describe a person from the same words, but 2 different manners: positive, pejorative, negative. The first portrait that you get of him, you will say that this is Donald Trump, but it's a positive portrait. It's going to connect to what people who love him would say about him. We know what they say. You take the second portrait, and in 5 seconds, you know, to the blind, that it's Donald Trump. It corresponds to what Christopher and I think of him. So it's completely different portrait of the same person after the same words. I'm finished.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like the choice we have.
Yes.
Yeah, you know, I hope everybody knows how to raise your hand. If not, when somebody finishes, you can unmute and just start talking, or put in the chat. I'll try to check the chat. I just want to make sure everybody gets a chance to speak if they have something to say. Um, so
Santino.
yeah, there we go. Penelope, go ahead.
Yeah, look, I'm just putting in a suggestion that exploratory research. I know we all want statistical verification, but you know, play can actually, you know, Einstein played. The inventors play. Got to put a bit of play in the exploratory research, and good things might come. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of exploratory research. And you know, exploratory research happens in all kinds of ways. I'm also a big fan of just thinking in terms of mathematical modeling, where you can just play with data, see if there's some consistent way to think of it. And you know, one of the things that's interesting is many discoveries in science, you know, whether it's Kepler's laws of motion, laws of gravity, all the way up to quantum theory, all those big breakthroughs around the year, you know, early 1900s with quantum theory and stuff. You know, a lot of it was just playing with the ideas, observing, playing, looking at it in different ways, and just confirming observations over and over again. So, yeah, there's many ways to gain knowledge. So that's you make an important point, and I just want to support it. There's many approaches. But the one thing that everybody would say, all the scientists, Richard Feynman makes this point very much, is um, no matter what you're doing, is to very carefully test it. So in the case of physics, they might be observing something in the Hadron Collider or something over and over and over again. It's just very careful observation, very careful questioning um, of exactly what we're looking at, getting other people to look at it, etc. You know, to confirm if our playing around is actually coming up with something. But thank you for sharing that. Anybody else have anything they want to say? Otherwise, I'll give it back to Christopher, who's got his hand up. We're good. You know, we're here to help the attendees, and I want to make sure everybody attending, it doesn't matter what your level of expertise is. These meetings are not just for the elite nerds. It's to help. We're here to help you with any question. And there's no question that's stupid. The only question that's stupid is the one you didn't ask, as the saying goes. So we're here for people at all levels to help you with whatever you're curious about. Nobody else has anything else. I'm going to give it to Christopher. Christopher, go ahead.
Yeah, I may be expressing a different point of view here, but I would argue that astrology does not require causation to work. And so I usually leave causation out of the picture for now. At the same time, I would argue that astrology definitely does need replication in order to work. To me, what matters is, just to use a mundane example, we tend to expect certain big outcomes during Saturn-Neptune conjunctions. Those conjunctions that happen about every 36 years. And if we routinely get those kinds of expected outcomes every time there's a Saturn-Neptune conjunction, then that makes that conjunction a Zeitgeber, a time giver or time cue for when these big things will happen. And there does not, we may feel like there's some kind of causal relationship there, but there doesn't have to be a causal connection between the planets and the terrestrial outcomes in order for astrology to be valid and work. All that's really required is that when some celestial event happens, that there is a corresponding type of terrestrial event that occurs, and that this is something that replicates both over time and space. Anyway,
yeah.
That's my opinion on it.
Okay, I just want to clarify terminology. I don't think Alexei, and Alexei can talk for himself here, was just to be clear about terminology, he's necessarily talking about causation. He's talking about a more detailed way of understanding. I have a lot of problem with this word causation because, my view is that most of physics has nothing to do with causality. They're mathematical models.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go all the way back to the law of gravitation, one of the first early discoveries, it's not just quantum theory. Right from the beginning with sophisticated physics, it was totally mysterious. And Newton makes that clear that the law of gravity makes no sense whatever and has no causality because it's instantaneous. So it's not just the breakthroughs in physics of things operating instantaneously. But anyway, I think just to be fair to Alexei's argument, what he's talking about is not causation, but is a more detailed understanding of what's going on with these correlations. And, feeling that would facilitate progress. I don't think he's saying it's necessary, but it would facilitate progress if we have some clearer idea and more specific ideas of why these correlations exist. So I'm not so sure that Alexei and Doc are that far apart. Does that make sense, Doc?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. And
To me, it
Bernard.
doesn't make sense. Right. To me, it doesn't make sense. I think the question of causality, I appreciate very much what Alexei said, and he actually mentioned physical particles like neutrinos. So as I understood it, he is looking for a better description of cause and effect, certainly to avoid the temporal confounding, which is at risk. But this topic has been up for discussion several times, and I think it's very interesting from a psychological perspective, and that's a little bit why I wanted to address what our personal agendas were, because earlier there has been a correlation between maths, physics, especially cosmology, and astrology. And several people have raised references that causality is not so important. I can tell you, for example, that research on the migratory ability of birds, which was inhibited by isolating their beaks from the electromagnetic field, was not taken seriously until finally, by higher resolution microscopy, one could identify quantum microtubuli. Also, even more importantly, I feel something that is strongly related to astrology is chronobiology, and anyone that knows anything about chronobiology knows that molecular clocks are the essential foundation of microbiology, right? The chronobiology, the causal link is molecular clocks. So if you want to keep it in a region where you have nice correlations, okay, you have to be prepared that a large part of the scientific community are not going to take you seriously.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you so much, Bernard. So we have different points of view. Bernard is saying finding causal mechanisms, and he's saying that is what Alexi's doing. He's talking about neutrinos, very specific things, accelerates science repeatedly. I mean, the problem of migration of birds has been mysterious for decades and decades, probably hundreds of, well, even longer. And then finally they found quantum effects in the eyes, the brains of birds or in humans, making that discovery with this fantastic equipment that can do it, solve the problem. I mean, to a large extent, and we see it in chronobiology, going down to molecular level. So Bernard's making a very strong argument that, if we shift our attention, and so I think Alexi and Bernard are in strong agreement that work in better understanding the mechanisms would tremendously accelerate and strengthen the astrological work. Alexi and Bernard, is that summary? I think you guys are making a very important point that just sitting back and looking at correlations, we could advance much better if we went, if we get down to the details of what these mechanisms are. Does that, Bernard and Alexi, Bernard first, is just making your point very clear that it's an important point.
I think it would refine where we need to look.
Yes.
When we're creating our test groups.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And Alexi, yeah, I think you and Bernard are thinking in the same way, and how important it is, from different points of view. You're pointing out the importance of looking. Let's not just ignore. Let's not just be satisfied with correlations. Let's try to figure out what the mechanisms are. I think you guys, both of you, are making a strong point. I don't know if you want to unmute Alexi and.
Yes, I'm here. I'm just switching the phone, and I missed probably a few minutes of conversation.
Okay, good. All right. Well, this is an exciting discussion. Anybody else? Let's see. We've got 15 minutes more. Anybody else want to continue this conversation, or and bring up something else?
Yeah, I just want to add on to what I said. I'm not trying to say that looking for causal mechanisms is not important, or that finding them doesn't advance astrology. It does. All I'm trying to say is the first step is simply show that astrology works by showing that correspondences exist that replicate over time. That's all that's required to show that astrology works. But the next step is then trying to explain why it works. And that's where we can get into causation, or sometimes mathematical reasons why it works.
Right.
There's I'm assuming everyone's familiar with the Mandelbrot set as a fractal. Looks like just a big bug. And one of the characteristics of that fractal image is that the basic shape of the Mandelbrot set keeps reappearing at different levels of magnification. And that's like a mathematical as above, so below. But it's not the case that the big Mandelbrot set causes the smaller images to appear. It's simply that it's the mathematics behind the creation of it, which results in these same images appearing at different levels of magnification. And in some instances, that may also be why certain things in astrology work, not in a direct causal manner in the sense that we usually mean that word in physics, but simply there may be some underlying mathematics creating similar patterns at the celestial level and at the same time at the terrestrial level.
Thank you. So maybe we are in agreement that number one, if you can replicate, you over and over and over replicate that Saturn Neptune has a certain effect, you're demonstrating an astrological reality, because if you can replicate it over and over and over again, the likelihood there's some extraneous variable that explains it is remote.
Mhm.
That's number one. Number two, either causal models or mathematical models like the Mandelbrot set are extremely helpful. So maybe we all, Alexi, Bernard, and Christopher, and myself and others, maybe we're pretty much in agreement. You know, some of us think certain parts of the puzzle are more important at this time, but in the end, I think we probably agree on those fundamentals. Do we, or do we not?
I think we're closer than we are far
We
apart.
agree.
We're
Yeah.
not that different.
And Bernard? You've got your-
Well, I can immediately comment on the Mandelbrot and other fractal growth. Quite common in biology that you can see certain fractal growth patterns. And once again, what is driving the research there is finding the bioelectric pattern which results in the fractal patterns. So no, I don't accept that we find some sort of purity in a mathematical statement. I could also go into the philosophical aspects of this with Gödel and his incompleteness theorem. And I think that before I see the causal mechanism, it's a nice story, but nothing more.
Very good. Very good. All these points of view are important. We need, the one thing we can agree on is we at least I'll say for myself, we need different people working on different things. And getting to those causal mechanisms, or physical mechanisms, neutrinos or whatever might be involved, would be a huge step forward. At the same time, we can continue the other correlation research. Which one's more important, which one's essential. People have different priorities, but it's all gradually moving in the right direction. Because if you have more and more correlations, you might know what to look for to find that mechanism. Okay, very, very good. I'm glad we have different points of view. It demonstrates something that I often emphasize to people. Sometimes people say, "Oh, let's pick up, do a training and show me just how to do the research step by step by step." That's a little bit like saying, "Show me how to play music." Well, what instrument do you want to play? What style do you want to play? There's a lot of choices, and the same is true with discovery. And we can see some of the variety of approaches and ideas here. Desdale, you have your hand up.
Yes, I see that there's a common question about free will. Now, in science, I don't know if scientists really realize that there's a law in physics that says that a body will continue in a straight line until act upon some external force. Now, with free will, you will have external force in front of you. That's when you will have free will. Everybody here, if you know that there's going to be a bomb in the city where you're going to be, you're going to be not there. Because of you're in front of an information, you're able to make free will. The free will load comes when you are in front of information, things that's going to give you hints. And that's where it comes from.
Yeah, very good point. You know, when we're faced with something, we have to decide what to do. Yeah, it's a good point. Um, and Vincent, you have your hand up.
Yeah, yeah. About free will and causality, there's a connection. Is free will fundamental or product of our ignorance of the causal mechanism? I don't know. We don't know. And about causality, I'm a bit cynical. I think it's a loss of time completely. We're not far from finding any causality. It's a lot too complex compared to what we know in physics or others. And I'll just tell a funny story. You look at the so-called explanation of astrology at the time of Newton. Oh, it was gravitational. Then with Maxwell, it became electromagnetism at the end of the 19th century. Then the explanation was relativistic with Einstein. Then it became, oh no, it's quantic at the time of Bohr. And now we are at the time of Mandelbrot. Oh, astrology is fractal. It's chaos, fractal chaos. That makes me laugh. I'm cynical about that because I think it's a loss of time.
Yeah, I encourage each person to follow their passion. So, you never know what somebody may come up with. So, yeah, I mean, I have my thoughts on which way to climb the mountain. But if somebody's intent on climbing it in a different way, I just never know. I may be wrong. So, yeah. I want to go back to something
Excuse me,
else.
I forgot to say something to Christopher. It's 10 seconds. You gave the example Saturn-Neptune conjunction and about research. If you want at least 50 events, you need close to 2,000 years.
Mhm.
So what will you do?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, you could use a faster moving I think that's
Yeah.
a random example. I want to go back to something that Christopher and I think, have different points of view on, and a more nuts and bolts thing, which is, and this just shows that, that people come to different ideas. We don't agree about every minute detail. We agree 90% of the time or 95% of the time. But as Christopher said, I'm a stickler for research methods, and I think it has a lot to do with my training. My training academically is in research methods. Not surprisingly, I'm pretty fanatical about research methods. So for me, when Starlene asks, when should I start looking at the data? And I think, Christopher, you said, well, if something's there, it's there, and the order in which you find it is not as important as the fact it's there. I have a very opposite viewpoint. To me, the order in which you do things is critically important.
Santino,
Yeah.
just a question. It is a question. Can it be that we try to put something in a box that can be in that box? Um, Perhaps, I don't know, we cannot prove statistically uh, astrology.
Right. In research methods in psychology and medicine, the word proof is not used. So I mean, just want to be careful with our terminology. It's verboten. It's like a swear word. We don't use it because nothing's proven. We just have confidence levels. So there's never a goal of proving or knowing something for certain. There's only confidence levels. So what we're looking at is, can we become more confident through the research that midpoints work, secondary progressions work, that aspects work better than zodiac signs? Yes, we're way more confident. Or do we know that? No, we don't really know anything. So the answer is we cannot put, I agree with you, we cannot, or what you're implying, we cannot put things in a nice box. And, I can give you a box of, distilled water, or sparkling water or whatever, and it's there. We all know it. We're like 100% sure. But in the work we do in areas like, especially like psychology and a lot of medicine and astrology, it's just confidence levels. And you can get up to over 90% confident, but there's still the possibility you're wrong. Does that make sense? Don, you can unmute. Yeah.
Yeah, that's my idea. Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, so we're in agreement. So back to what I was saying, I'm a stickler about um, procedures, and one of my pet peeves, like people have different things that they're bug them, lack of mechanisms. Alexi and Bernard feel that that's critically important. There's things that each of us think important. And for me, I think astrology research is pretty much a mess in general because astrologers do not distinguish between the level of that they're being confirmatory and the level that they're being exploratory. And I think it's made the whole history of astrology. And I also, to be quite frank about it, and you can throw rotten tomatoes at your screen, I won't feel it, that's fine, is that I think that a lot of the research published in Correlation Journal, which is by far the exceptionally good and only resource we have, I haven't seen anything that comes close to it, it's still a lot of trash in there because the research is not a strict hypothesis test, but people are using point oh p less than 0.01 and 0.05. And to me, that's nonsense. You're not even close to confirming the idea. So I'm, Vincent one time was joking, and it's only a half joke because it's partly true, that sometimes I sound like Jeffrey Dean, the cynics of astrology. And it's actually true. I share a lot in common with Dean and Mather. Um, I am very critical of a lot of research because of my indoctrination, if we want to call it that, in research methods where I would have gotten thrown out on my ear and would have never gotten my degree if I was sloppy in the procedures. And I think that that's good and is correct. But anyway, we all have little things that we're particular about. And I'm a stickler about the procedure as well as the statistics. And, this is something I've also learned a tremendous amount from Christopher because I'm such a stickler. And when he started using, he didn't use shuffled control groups and using risk ratio. And I first looked at it and I went, oh my God, I can't have confidence in that. But as I understood better what he's doing, I realized you can't, as he told me, you can't use a shuffled control group for some of the things he's doing. Well, you can't use it. There's no question. He's doing the best procedure possible with his way of analyzing it, which is critically important. So we are learning, refining, and improving. It's not like we're butting heads all the time. I'm constantly, learning. But while I'm learning, there's certain things we still, prioritize differently. Doc, do you pretty much agree with my summary there?
Yeah, it always brings to mind this old saying that it's it's an old rabbinical saying in the Talmud. There's a passage in Proverbs or Psalms which says, "Iron sharpens iron," and the ancient rabbis, explained that as when two scholars argue and debate constructively with each other, they sharpen each other, they improve each other. And that's what I think you and I and others find to be the case.
Yes.
Also, I was really happy to hear someone else talk today about chronobiology.
Yes.
uh,
Yeah.
and Gödel, those are important references for me.
Yeah.
And in chronobiology, they have sometimes, they'll look at specific effects of the moon or the sun on this organism. And many instances, they have over time been able to explain causal relationships, which is great.
Yeah.
And they've also shown that contrary to what astronomer, Carl Sagan back in the 70s was somewhat famous for saying astrology doesn't work because the only way it could work is through gravity, and the physician who is delivering the baby has a stronger gravitational impact on that child than, say, the moon does. But chronobiologist, I think it was the late biologist, botanist Peter Barrow, if I have the name correct, he showed there are certain plants whose leaves will turn one way or another in response to gravity of the moon. And so weak as it is on a single organism, that proves that single organisms can respond to something like lunar gravity,
Wow.
both on Earth, and they replicated it up in the space station.
Wow. Amazing. So his argument has been shown to be incorrect, even though it seemed convincing at the time. And
Yeah. Neil
we've
deGrasse Tyson repeats that argument, but
yeah.
and other physicists and astrophysicists do too, but it doesn't really hold up because it's been shown that very weak gravitational effects from the moon can impact individual organisms after all.
Yeah. We're gonna start coming to a close. So Bernard, go ahead.
Yeah, I've been like waiting for 2 months now to comment on Vincent's the reversed tropical zodiac, and this relates to chronobiology slightly. If I may, it won't take too long. Do we have time for that?
Yeah, go ahead. We try to keep it within
Great.
a few minutes if possible.
Right.
Yeah.
So as Vincent is here, it's a good opportunity, right?
Yeah.
And what I understood from his presentation was that he checked, and this is actually a good example of how we become blinded by our too simple of models, perhaps, because as I understood his approach to it, the photo influx that he was looking at on the southern hemisphere was related to the latitude derivation from the equator. But if we look at what the actual local photo influx is, especially on the southern hemisphere, this is governed by the proximity of the massive oceans that we have on the southern hemisphere. And it's the monsoon climate that makes the photo influx deviate from a simple hemispheric model. This is something which a critic, which would try to explain the tropical zodiac from seasonal variation, that would be very quick to jump on this critique, and perhaps Vincent has heard it already. But I will before I I was going to forget it. I just wanted to voice that.
Yeah, go ahead, Vincent. You need to unmute. You need to unmute, Vincent. Vincent, unmute.
Sure.
Okay.
What do you mean by photo influx? I'm not sure I understand because I'm French. So can you explain that word, those two words,
Right. So
please?
photo influx is how much light reaches the surface of the Earth, where humans are affected chronobiologically by it, and it decreases the further you get from the equator. If
Okay.
you look at the top of the atmosphere, but at the actual surface of the Earth, because of different monsoon seasons and different cloud covers, you will not get an idealistic lessening of photo influx as you move away from the equator.
Okay, now I can answer. Obviously, I've never been there because, as I've clearly expressed before, I stay very far away from causality. Now you're describing a causal mechanism, and I would say I'm not interested in causality in astrology, first. Second, let's say we played a game that you suggest. The mechanism you're describing is stronger close to the equator. I don't have any subject close to the equator. Remember that it's hard to find subject in the southern hemisphere. So the subject we found it's nearly impossible to find subject even 10 degrees close to the equator. Lastly, if you read my research, I'm not sure you read it. There's a lot more into it if you read in correlation than you receive in a conference. There's no connection between latitude and the effect. It's a yes or no effect, the way the research has been done. I don't pretend there's nothing else, but what I've done, I don't see any connection latitude while. If you look at this score, the intensity of the score that create the idea of the reversal, the score is not stronger as you go further from equator or closer. There's no connection. I studied the correlation between both variables, and I've done a binomial test. There's no connection. So it's a
No,
yes
but that's
or no.
what I'm saying.
What happened? Just finish. What happened close to the equator? I don't know. Okay, I'm finished.
Right. So to specify my critique a little bit more, what I'm saying is that you looked for a possible correlation in too simple of a model if you're just looking at latitudes, because the chronobiological critique that a critic which is informed of seasonal effects upon psychology, developmental psychology, they would say, no, the southern hemisphere, the light influx there, which affects our psychological development. There's quite a few psychological researches done that have shown that that children born at different during different seasons will develop in different ways. So there is a seasonal effect, yeah. But the problem is with the southern hemisphere is that instead of a regular I mean, it's not as easy as the northern hemisphere where you have a tropical zone, then you have a subtropical zone, then you have a temperate zone, then you have a subarctic zone, and so on. It's more the photon influx, which is what is affecting the psychological development in infants, it will vary depending upon rain season and dry season instead.
Okay. The answer is easy. The photoperiodism was and the seasonal effect and all those things was the starting point of the questioning, because there's obviously a question there since a long time. So I avoided talking too much about the it was the word photoperiodic effect. By the way, we reversed the signs for not only for the sun, which would be connected to seasonal effect, but for everything, for the planets and everything. I don't know what you'd say plays against the success of the research. So if it's not a good model, it shouldn't produce results. And read the research, you're going to see that the results are very low p-value, and I don't know the explanation.
Let me just clarify one thing. I
Yeah.
think one of Bernard's points is if you want to test the photo influx effect or photo periodism, whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
you would need to look at the season the person was born and the place where they're born, and do not use latitude, because latitude is not a good indicator in the southern hemisphere of amount of light. That's all he's
I
saying.
don't understand. You mean you do the chart without using the
What I'm saying is,
coordinates?
if you want to test the effect
But
of light,
this is not what I want to test. Oh,
well, you
this
did
is what no,
you
I
did
didn't test
test
it.
the
No,
latitude to
no,
see if
yes,
latitude was
no,
relevant.
no. I didn't test latitude. I test southern against northern. That's it. It's binary.
But
It's
you
simple.
didn't you do a follow-up where you saw if the effect was stronger near the equator?
Yeah, and the effect was not
Okay,
stronger.
I think Bernard's point is this. His point is this. On that additional, your primary thing was just to see north versus southern, but you did
Yes.
do a follow-up analysis to see if latitude made a difference.
Yeah, because I was asked
Okay,
to do it, and I
but
showed that
what
there's no
Bernard is
connection.
saying, is that in the follow-up study, which is
Okay.
not your primary interest, but you did
Okay.
do a follow-up study. What he's saying is that in the follow-up study, if you wanted to test, he's suggesting it would be better to look at the amount of light, the photo influx in the place where the person was born and not the latitude, because
Yeah.
latitude does not correlate very well with photo influx or photoperiodism, whatever you want to call it, in the southern hemisphere. He's just saying in your follow-up study, if you had,
Ah,
which would be very complicated and difficult, and he's not even suggesting that you do it. He's just saying
oh yeah,
that
I
if
see
you
what
want
now I
to do
understand.
that
Okay.
and that you don't want to, that's fine. But if somebody wants to, that's a
Okay.
better way to do it.
So
I
that
think
would
that's
be a
what he's
kind of
saying.
comment. Okay, if I understand well what you explain, it's instead of trying of doing the study of correlation between latitudes and the strength of the effect of reversal, it would have been better. I found nothing. If I just studied the connection between the strength of the reversal effect and this other variable that you described, the photo influx, maybe I would have found a correlation.
Exactly. That's
Oh,
all
okay,
he's
thank
saying.
you. Is
Yeah,
that what
that's
you
what he's
mean,
saying.
Bernard? Okay, that makes sense. Okay. Is that
Yeah.
what you meant, Bernard? Is he gone?
No, I'm just my connection is a bit slow.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I meant. And
thank you. Okay.
and I considered your argument also that of course you haven't just considered the zodiac sign of the sun,
Yeah.
but as you have worked from the tropical zodiac, the position of the sun, even with I mean, if you really want to stretch it, the position of the other planets is also in relationship to the sun.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so that's and that was a brilliant conversation between the three of us, just exploring, people might want to continue the research if they're interested in the possibility of a photo influx impact on the zodiac. Everybody has different questions, different intuitions, and if somebody wants to do that, that would, I think Bernard made a good point. That there's a better way to test that than looking at latitude, if somebody wants to research that. Okay. Yeah, we are what, 16 minutes over, which is not too bad. Are we good? I think this is a fantastic discussion. And one of the things I love is the honesty, the directness, and the respect. And, if we can be honest and straightforward and realize that we're all, and be humble at the same time, then as Christopher likes to quote the Judaic tradition, we sharpen the knives. And I think that's what we've done again. We learn from each other. So wonderful. Anybody have any last closing comments? We will meet again in a day and a half, Monday evening, my time on the East Coast. If anybody's seriously addicted to this and wants to come back again in a day and a half. Are we good? And Starlene, I hope we answered or showed different points of view on and some because I like the nuts and bolts stuff that you brought up because you're in the trenches and you're deciding, when do I start looking? Da, da, da. And we can discuss that some more. But yeah.
Yeah, it was good to hear everybody's opinions. So thank you all.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Very good. Thank you for being here. We have a lot going on with Cosmobiology Institute. We're really building a global community. We're looking for support, financial support, volunteer support. There's a lot going on. Some people have jumped in and building. Ton has really is continuing to do marvelous work in building this global community for people who want to really really assess astrology in a more careful and serious way. Okay, I think it's very exciting and very important. Thank you to all of you for being here. God bless. Namaste.